In the sterile white hallway of New York's most exclusive business conference center, a man who controlled half the city's underground economy stood frozen, his hand trembling as he held a stranger's fallen notebook. Kong Dian had ended business negotiations with warlords without flinching, had stared down the barrels of guns with cold indifference, but nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the moment a breathless black woman with paint-stained fingers and determination blazing in her dark eyes burst through the wrong door and collided straight into his carefully constructed world. The notebook in his hands contained her dreams, her fears, her entire future sketched in brilliant detail. And in that single, fateful moment, the most dangerous man in New York's Korean underworld made a decision that would set both their worlds on fire. He would make her his. Consequences be damned. Welcome back to Afro Soul Diaries, where forbidden love meets unstoppable destiny. If you're new here, subscribe and hit that notification bell because you do not want to miss how this explosive romance unfolds. And to my returning family, drop a comment telling me if you've ever had a meet-cute that changed your entire life. Now, let's dive into Zara and Dian's story. Zara Williams had exactly 17 minutes to make the most important presentation of her life. 17 minutes to prove that a 26-year-old black woman from Brooklyn who'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through business school deserved a spot in the prestigious Apex Innovation Fellowship, a program that had never, in its 15-year history, accepted someone who looked like her. "You've got this. See," she whispered to herself, speed-walking down the polished hallway of the Manhattan Luxury Conference Center, her portfolio clutched against her chest like armor. The rejection letters from the past 2 years were still fresh in her memory, but this year would be different. It had to be. She'd spent 6 months perfecting her pitch for Brushstrokes and Business, a revolutionary program combining art therapy with entrepreneurial training for underprivileged youth. It was personal. It was powerful. It was everything her younger self had needed when she'd lost her parents, and art had been the only thing that saved her from drowning in grief. But first, she desperately needed to find a restroom. The coffee she'd nervously consumed that morning had caught up with her, and the women's restroom near the main conference hall had an out-of-order sign plastered across it. Zara glanced at her watch, 14 minutes now, and made a snap decision. The hallway was deserted, and there was another restroom sign around the corner. She pushed through the heavy door without reading the symbol clearly, her mind already rehearsing her opening lines. The space was far more luxurious than she'd expected, all black marble and gold fixtures, smelling of expensive sandalwood cologne. Weird choice for a women's room, she thought absently, but these upscale venues always did the most. Zara set her portfolio on the pristine counter and stared at her reflection. Her honey-brown skin glowed against the white silk blouse she'd splurged on, and her natural curls were perfect in their high puff. Gold hoops caught the light. She looked confident, capable, ready. She just needed to believe it. "You are Zara Williams," she told her reflection firmly. "You've survived foster care, worked your way through Columbia, and built a community program from nothing. Some stuffy fellowship panel doesn't define your worth." "That's an excellent affirmation," a deep, accented voice said from behind her. "Though I'm curious why you're delivering it in the men's restroom." Zara's heart stopped. She whirled around to find a man emerging from one of the stalls she hadn't bothered to check, because who checks stalls when you think you're alone? But this wasn't just any man. He stood at least 6'2", with the kind of presence that seemed to bend the very air around him. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that looked almost black in the ambient lighting, and perfectly styled dark hair that probably cost more to maintain than her monthly rent. His charcoal suit was clearly custom-made, fitting his lean, powerful frame with precision that screamed wealth and danger in equal measure. And he was looking at her with an expression that Zara couldn't quite decipher. Surprise, definitely, but also something else. Something intense that made her skin prickle with awareness. "Oh my God," Zara breathed, her face heating with mortification. "Oh my God. The sign, I was in a hurry and She grabbed her portfolio and spun toward the door, but in her flustered state, the leather folder slipped from her fingers. Papers exploded across the pristine marble floor, sketches, financial projections, personal statements, everything. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Zara dropped to her knees, frantically gathering the scattered pieces of her dreams. "Let me help." The man was beside her before she could protest, moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost predatory. No, please, I've got it. I'm so sorry. Zara's words tumbled over each other as she snatched at papers, not even looking at what she was grabbing. But then she noticed his hands had stilled. He was holding one of her sketches, a charcoal drawing she'd done of a young girl painting a mural, hope and determination evident in every line. It was the centerpiece of her presentation, the emotional heart of her entire proposal. You drew this. His voice had changed, softened somehow, though it still carried that undercurrent of authority that probably came from being the type of man who wore $1,000 suits on a Tuesday morning. Yes, Zara said quietly, momentarily forgetting her embarrassment. That's Imani. She was one of the first kids in my pilot program. When I met her, she hadn't spoken in 6 months, trauma from witnessing domestic violence. Art gave her a voice again. The man's dark eyes lifted from the sketch to her face, and Zara felt the full force of his attention like a physical thing. No one had ever looked at her quite like that, as if he was seeing not just her face, but somehow deeper, into the parts of herself she kept hidden. Kong Dian, he said, extending his hand with the sketch still held carefully in the other. And you are late, Zara blurted, accepting his hand for a brief shake and trying to ignore the jolt of electricity that shot up her arm at the contact. I'm so late. I have a presentation in. She glanced at her watch and her stomach dropped. 9 minutes. She grabbed the remaining papers, not bothering to organize them, and scrambled to her feet. Dian rose with her, still holding that one sketch with a carefulness that seemed at odds with his intimidating appearance. The Apex Innovation Fellowship? He asked, nodding toward the header visible on one of her documents. Yes, how did you? Zara paused, really looking at him for the first time. The expensive suit, the confidence, the way he stood like he owned not just the room, but the entire building. Are you one of the judges? Something flickered across his face, amusement maybe? Something like that. Perfect, Zara muttered. I just gave the worst first impression in the history of first impressions to someone who has a say in my future. This is perfect. Just perfect. On the contrary, Dian said, and was that the hint of a smile playing at his lips? You've given me quite a lot to think about, Miss Williams. Zara Williams. She held out her hand for her sketch. May I have that back, please? He looked at the drawing once more, something unreadable crossing his features, before carefully handing it back. His fingers brushed hers in the transfer, and Zara felt that strange electricity again. Good luck with your presentation, Zara Williams, he said, her name sounding different in his accented voice, formal yet intimate somehow. Though I don't think you'll need it. Zara mumbled something that might have been thanks and fled the restroom, her heart hammering against her ribs. It wasn't until she was halfway down the hall that she realized she hadn't just been flustered by embarrassment. She'd been flustered by the way he'd looked at her. Like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. Behind her, still standing in the men's restroom, Kong Dian looked at his hand, the one that had touched hers, and slowly closed his fingers, as if to hold on to the sensation. In his 33 years, he'd built an empire that spanned from legitimate tech investments to the shadowy underworld that most people pretended didn't exist. He'd been groomed since childhood to take over his family's operations, trained to be calculating, ruthless, untouchable. He'd never believed in love at first sight. Had, in fact, considered it a weakness that practical men couldn't afford. But standing in that restroom, looking at the passion and pain and hope captured in Zara Williams's artwork, listening to her speak about a traumatized child she'd helped heal, something had shifted in his carefully ordered world. His phone buzzed. A text from his second-in-command, Min Jae. Status update? The Kwan family is getting impatient about the warehouse situation. Dian deleted the message without responding. The warehouse situation, a territorial dispute with a rival organization that was threatening to turn violent, suddenly seemed far less important than ensuring he saw Zara Williams again. He pulled out his personal phone and made a call. Sung, he said when his head of security answered. I need comprehensive information on someone. Zara Williams, applicant to the Apex Innovation Fellowship. Everything background, education, current residence, known associates. And I need it within the hour. Yes, sir. Should I flag this as a security concern? Dean thought about warm brown eyes filled with determination, about hands stained with paint and dreams, about a voice that had trembled with nervousness but hadn't broken. "No," he said quietly. "Flag it as personal." There was a surprised pause on the other end. Dean never mixed personal with business, but Sung was too well trained to question orders. "Understood, sir." Dean ended the call and straightened his tie, preparing to return to the legitimate business meeting he'd stepped away from. But his mind was already elsewhere, already planning. The Apex Innovation Fellowship was one of several programs his family's legitimate holdings sponsored. He rarely involved himself in the selection process. That was what hired executives were for. But things had just changed. He would make absolutely certain that Zara Williams got her fellowship, would ensure she had every resource, every opportunity to build her dream program. And in the process, he would find a way into her life. It was manipulative, perhaps. Certainly not the honest foundation for any relationship. But Kong Dian hadn't built an empire by playing fair. And now that he'd found someone he wanted, he would have her, whatever it took. Even if it meant hiding the most dangerous parts of himself until she was too entangled to walk away. Zara's presentation had gone better than she'd dared to hope. After the initial stumble caused by her disastrous restroom encounter, she'd found her rhythm. The panel of 5 judges, serious-faced executives, and philanthropists had listened intently as she'd explained her vision. She'd shown them the statistics on art therapy's effectiveness, the testimonials from her pilot program participants, the scalable business model she'd developed. But it was when she'd held up that sketch of Amani and told her story that she'd seen their expressions shift. Even the most stoic judge had leaned forward, engaged. Dean hadn't been among the panel. She'd noted with relief and strange disappointment. Maybe he'd been lying about his connection to the fellowship. Maybe he'd just been a businessman using the conference center for meetings. Either way, she'd likely never see him again. She tried to ignore the hollowness that thought created in her chest. "Girl, you're telling me you walked into a men's bathroom and met a fine Korean man in an expensive suit?" Her best friend Sienna's voice crackled through Zara's phone later that evening as she walked toward the Brooklyn subway station. "And you didn't get his number?" "Zara Marie Williams, I taught you better than that." "It wasn't like that, see," Zara protested, though she was smiling. "It was mortifying. I was scrambling around on a bathroom floor picking up my papers like some kind of disaster human. And he helped you, which is adorable and chivalrous." "Then what?" "Then I went to my presentation, nailed it, thank you very much, and came home." End of story. That is the worst end of story I've ever heard. What was his name again? Kong Dian. But Sienna, seriously, it doesn't matter. He's clearly some kind of wealthy businessman, probably married with kids, and I'm a broke grad school graduate who eats ramen 4 nights a week. We exist in completely different universes. And that's why you've mentioned him 6 times in this conversation. Zara was saved from responding by the sudden sensation of being watched. She slowed her pace, her instincts, honed from years of navigating city's streets alone, prickling with awareness. The spring evening was growing dark, and the street was less crowded than usual. There, behind her, a black sedan with tinted windows, crawling along the curb at walking pace. "See, I'll call you back," Zara said quietly. "What's wrong?" "Zara." She ended the call and picked up her pace, her hand automatically reaching into her purse for her pepper spray. The sedan matched her speed. Zara's heart kicked into overdrive. She was 3 blocks from the subway station, on a street that was too empty, too exposed. She thought about running, about screaming, about... The sedan's window rolled down. "Miss Williams." The man in the passenger seat was Korean, probably in his 40s, with a severe expression and an earpiece that screamed security. "Please don't be alarmed. Mr. King has requested your presence for dinner. The vehicle is safe." Zara stopped walking, gripping her pepper spray tighter. "You've got to be kidding me. You're literally following me in a creepy car and telling me not to be alarmed? That's serial killer 101. The man had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "I understand this is unconventional. Mr. Kong wishes to discuss your fellowship application. He's waiting at Moonstone Restaurant, 5 blocks from here. I have identification if that would make you more comfortable." "More comfortable? Nothing about this makes me comfortable." But even as she said it, Zara's mind was racing. Moonstone Restaurant, she'd read about it. Impossible to get a reservation. frequented by celebrities and power brokers. And Dian wanted to discuss her fellowship? This was either an incredible opportunity or a terrible decision waiting to happen. I can call you a regular cab if you prefer, the security man offered, seeming to sense her hesitation. Mr. Kang simply hoped you might join him. But he was very clear that you were not to feel pressured. What's your name? Zara asked suddenly. Sung, miss. Sung, if I get in this car and you're actually taking me somewhere to murder me, I want you to know that my best friend already has your license plate number and a photo of this vehicle, and she will absolutely hunt you down. This was a lie. She hadn't thought to photograph anything, but Sung didn't need to know that. A hint of a smile crossed Sung's face. Noted, Miss Williams. I assure you, Mr. Kang's intentions are purely professional and perhaps slightly romantic, though he didn't authorize me to admit that part. Despite herself, Zara felt her lips twitch. The honest admission was oddly reassuring. Fine, she said, making a decision that was probably stupid but felt inevitable. But I'm texting my friend the address and checking in every 30 minutes. Mr. Kang would expect nothing less from an intelligent woman, Sung replied, opening the car door. Okay, family, pause for a second. Is Zara making a boss move or a risky move? Drop a comment with your thoughts. And if you're loving this story, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs a dose of forbidden romance in their life. Now, back to this dinner that's about to change everything. Moonstone Restaurant occupied the top floor of a building in Tribeca, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a glittering view of Manhattan's skyline. The interior was all elegant minimalism, dark wood, soft lighting, and hushed conversations from the handful of occupied tables. But Zara barely noticed the decor. Her attention fixed on the private corner table where Kang Dian sat, somehow looking even more striking than he had that morning. He'd removed his suit jacket, and his white dress shirt was perfectly tailored to his frame. He was reading something on a tablet, his expression focused and intense. When he looked up and saw her, his entire face transformed. It wasn't a smile, exactly, more like a subtle softening, a warmth entering those dark eyes that made Zara's breath catch. He stood as she approached, and she was struck again by his height, his presence, the way he seemed to command space without trying. Zara, he said, and there was genuine pleasure in his voice. Thank you for coming. I know the invitation was unorthodox. Unorthodox is a polite way to describe it, Zara replied, though she was smiling. Most people just send a text. I don't have your number, Dian pointed out, gesturing for her to sit. A situation I'd very much like to remedy. A server appeared immediately, the kind of invisible, perfect service that came with restaurants where entrees cost more than Zara's weekly grocery budget. The lady will have. Dian looked at her questioningly. Just water for now, Zara said, feeling overwhelmed. Thank you. When the server disappeared, she leaned forward. Okay, cards on the table. Why am I here? Sung said something about my fellowship application, but this doesn't feel like a professional meeting. Dian had the grace to look slightly abashed, an expression that made him seem younger, less intimidating. You're right. I wasn't entirely honest about my intentions. Shocking, Zara said dryly. I am connected to the fellowship, Dian continued. My family's company, Kong Innovations, is one of the primary sponsors. I sit on the advisory board, though I rarely involve myself in day-to-day operations. So you could potentially influence whether I'm accepted. Zara's stomach sank. Is that what this is? Some kind of quid pro quo situation? Because if so, you can take me home right now. No. The word came out sharp, almost fierce. Zara, no. Your acceptance has nothing to do with this dinner. You're brilliant. Your presentation was extraordinary. The selection committee would be fools not to choose you, and they're not fools. Then why? Because I couldn't stop thinking about you, Dian said simply, and the honest admission hung in the air between them. Because I've spent the entire day distracted by the memory of a woman who gives motivational speeches to herself in restrooms and creates art that captures human resilience in a single sketch. Because I'm 33 years old and I've never felt this before, this certainty that I was supposed to meet someone. Zara's heart was hammering. You don't even know me. Then let me, Dian said, and his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her feel exposed and seen all at once. Have dinner with me. Tell me about your program, your dreams, what made you choose art therapy. Tell me why you give yourself affirmations and what put that steel in your spine. And what do I get to know about you? Zara challenged, though she could feel her resistance crumbling. Whatever you want to ask. Okay. Zara settled back in her chair, studying him. What do you really do, Kongdian? And don't give me some vague answer about the family business. Nobody has the kind of security detail you clearly have, she nodded toward Sung, who was stationed discreetly near the restaurant entrance, unless they're into something more complicated than tech investments. Something flickered across Dian's face, surprise, perhaps respect. He was quiet for a long moment, and Zara could almost see him weighing his options, deciding how much truth to offer. My family's business interests are diverse, he said finally. Some of those interests operate in spaces that exist between what's perfectly legal and what's strictly prohibited. So you're a criminal. Zara kept her voice level, though her pulse was racing. I'm a businessman who inherited an empire built on both legitimate and illegitimate foundations, Dian corrected. I've spent the last 5 years working to transition our operations toward legal enterprises. It's a slow process, one that requires maintaining relationships with people who don't want change. People like other criminals. Yes, Zara should stand up. Should walk out of this restaurant and block this man from her life before he could complicate it further. Instead, she asked, have you ever hurt anyone? Dian held her gaze. I've made decisions that protected my family and our people. Some of those decisions had consequences for others. I won't lie and say I'm innocent, Zara. But I've never harmed someone who didn't pose a direct threat, and I've never involved innocence in business matters. It should have scared her. Maybe it did, a little. But there was something about his honesty, the way he didn't try to romanticize or excuse what he was, that made her stay seated. Why are you telling me this? She asked quietly. Most people in your position would lie, at least at first. Because you deserve to make an informed choice, Dian said. And because I found that I very much don't want to lie to you. The server returned, and they ordered Dian choosing for them both when Zara admitted she had no idea what half the menu items were. The food, when it came, was exquisite, but Zara barely tasted it. They talked. She told him about losing her parents in a car accident when she was 12, about the foster care system that had shuffled her between homes, about the art teacher who'd given her supplies and encouragement when she'd had nothing else. He told her about growing up as the only son of a powerful family, about the pressure to be perfect, about a childhood that had been more training than play. I was taught to fight before I could properly read, he said with a wry smile. My father believed that sentiment was weakness. He died thinking I was too soft to properly run the organization. Were you close? Zara asked. No. He was a hard man. Brilliant, strategic, but hard. I respected him. I'm not sure I ever loved him, or if he wanted me to. There was something vulnerable in that admission, a glimpse beneath the polished exterior that made Zara's chest ache. And your mother? She died when I was 7. I barely remember her, except that she sang while she cooked, and she always smelled like jasmine. Zara reached across the table and touched his hand, a brief contact, but he looked at her with such surprised gratitude that she knew he wasn't used to casual comfort. They talked through dinner and dessert, through coffee and into the late evening. The restaurant began to empty around them, but neither seemed to notice. It was only when Sung discreetly approached the table and murmured something about a situation requiring attention that Dian's expression shifted, the warm openness replaced by something harder. I need to leave, he said, and Zara heard the genuine regret in his voice. There's a business matter that can't wait. The dangerous kind of business matter? Zara asked. The tedious kind, I hope. But yes, potentially dangerous. He stood, then hesitated. Can I see you again? Tomorrow. Zara knew she should say no. Should put distance between herself and this beautiful, dangerous man who looked at her like she was something precious. Yes, she said instead, and watched his whole face light up. I'll text you, he said, then paused. If you give me your number this time. She laughed and pulled out her phone. They exchanged numbers, their fingers brushing again in that now familiar spark of electricity. Sung will drive you home, Dian said. And Zara? Thank you for tonight. For trusting me enough to stay. Thank you for being honest, she replied. Even about the parts that should probably scare me more than they do. Give it time, Dian said with a slight smile. The fear might still show up. But as Sung drove her back to Brooklyn, as Zara watched the city lights blur past the window, she wasn't afraid. She was exhilarated, uncertain, balanced on the edge of something that could either destroy her or transform her life completely. She just had to decide if she was brave enough to jump. Over the next 3 weeks, Zara fell into a routine that felt like living in two different worlds. By day, she worked her part-time job at an art supply store in Manhattan, taught free painting classes to kids at the community center, and waited anxiously for the fellowship decision that would come at the end of the month. By night, she tumbled deeper into Kong Dian's extraordinary life. He courted her with an old-fashioned intensity that was both thrilling and overwhelming. Private dinners at restaurants where chefs prepared special menus just for them. Midnight walks along the Brooklyn Bridge when the city felt like it belonged to only them. A surprise visit to her community center where he'd watched her teach with such focused attention that she'd nearly forgotten her lesson plan. He sent her books he thought she'd like, always with handwritten notes in surprisingly elegant handwriting. He remembered everything she told him, her favorite flower, sunflowers, her comfort food, her late mother's mac and cheese recipe, the art movements that inspired her most. But he was also careful, protective to the point of frustration. There were always bodyguards at a discreet distance. There were certain questions he deflected, certain parts of his life he kept carefully separate from their time together. And they hadn't progressed beyond heated kisses that left Zara breathless and wanting because Dian always pulled back, always stopped before they crossed that final line. "I need you to be sure," he'd said the last time, his forehead pressed against hers, both of them breathing hard. "I need you to understand what you're choosing before we go further." It was noble and frustrating in equal measure. Sienna, of course, had opinions. "So let me get this straight," her best friend said, sprawled across Zara's tiny apartment couch while Zara attempted to paint. "Fine Korean Mafia boss is whining and dining you, being a perfect gentleman, making you wait for the good stuff, and you're complaining?" "I'm not complaining," Zara protested, though she absolutely was. "I'm just confused. One minute he's looking at me like he wants to devour me, the next he's putting on the brakes. Because he actually respects you and wants you to make an informed choice? Girl, where's the problem?" "The problem is that I've already made my choice," Zara said quietly, setting down her brush. "I know what he is. I know it's complicated and potentially dangerous and probably stupid. And I still want him. I still think about him constantly. She cut herself off, but Sienna sat up, her expression shifting from teasing to serious. "You still what, Z?" "I think I'm falling in love with him," Zara admitted. "After 3 weeks. Which is insane, right? You can't fall in love with someone that fast." "My parents got engaged after 2 weeks and they've been married for 35 years, Sienna pointed out. "When you know, you know. But do I really know him? He's still so careful about what he shares. There are parts of his life I don't see." Before Sienna could respond, Zara's phone buzzed with a text. "Dian, are you home? I need to see you. Something's happened." Zara's stomach dropped at the terseness of the message, so different from his usual warmth. "Zara, yes, I'm here." "What's wrong?" "Dian, I'm 5 minutes away. I'll explain when I arrive." "He's coming here?" Sienna asked, reading over Zara's shoulder. "He's never come to your apartment before." It was true. They'd always met at neutral locations or places he'd chosen. Zara had assumed it was because her cramped studio in a converted warehouse was worlds away from the luxury he was used to. But maybe it had been another way of keeping boundaries, keeping her separate from his real life. "See, I'm sorry, but..." "I'm already gone," Sienna said, grabbing her bag. "Text me if you need backup. And Z, be careful. Men don't show up unannounced because everything's fine." After Sienna left, Zara paced her small apartment, anxiety building. She tidied automatically, not that there was much to tidy in a 500-square-foot space, and tried not to imagine worst-case scenarios. When the knock finally came, she nearly jumped out of her skin. Dian stood in her doorway, and Zara's breath caught. He looked different than she'd ever seen him, tie loosened, hair slightly disheveled, a tightness around his eyes that spoke of stress or pain. There was a faint redness on his left cheekbone that would probably be a bruise by morning. "What happened?" Zara pulled him inside, her hands automatically reaching for his face. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," he said, but his voice was rough. "There was a disagreement with another organization. It's handled now." "A disagreement that left you bruised?" "You should see the other guy," Dian said with an attempt at humor that fell flat. Zara guided him to sit on her second-hand couch, then went to get ice from her tiny freezer. When she returned, He was looking around her apartment with an expression she couldn't quite read. The space was small, but she'd made it home, walls covered with her own artwork and pieces from the kids she taught, plants crowding the windowsill, books stacked on every available surface. It was nothing like the sleek, expensive spaces he inhabited, and Zara felt a flutter of self-consciousness. "Here," she said, pressing a bag of frozen peas wrapped in a dish towel against his cheek. Dian's hand came up to cover hers, holding it there. "I shouldn't have come here." "Why not?" "Because I'm bringing my world to your doorstep, and your world is." He gestured around her apartment. "It's art and light and hope. Everything I touch gets complicated." "I'm not that fragile," Zara said, settling beside him on the couch. "And you're already part of my world, whether you're physically in my apartment or not." Dian looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something crumbling in his carefully maintained composure. "There's a situation," he said quietly. "Another family is challenging our territory, trying to expand into spaces we control. Tonight they sent a message, attacked one of our legitimate businesses, hurt people who work for us." "Are they okay?" "The people who were hurt. Minor injuries, thankfully. But it's escalating. They want war, and I've been trying to avoid that." "Why?" "Because war means violence. It means putting my people in danger, risking everything we've built. And it means potentially dragging you into something dangerous." Zara set the makeshift ice pack aside and turned to face him fully. "Is that why you came here?" "To warn me. I came here because after tonight, after dealing with violence and threats and the worst parts of what I am, all I wanted was to see you," Dian admitted. "Because somehow, in 3 weeks, you've become the thing I think about when everything else is chaos. You're the calm in the center of the storm." "Dian." "I'm being selfish," he continued, standing abruptly and pacing her small space like a caged animal. "I should put distance between us. Should end this before you get hurt because of me. But I can't seem to make myself do it." Zara stood too, catching his hand and pulling him to a stop. "Then don't. You don't understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly," Zara interrupted. "I understand that what you do is dangerous. That being with you means complications. But I also understand that I feel more alive when I'm with you than I've felt since my parents died. That you look at me like I'm the most important thing in any room. That you've been nothing but honest with me, even when the truth makes you look bad." "Zara, I'm choosing this," she said firmly. "I'm choosing you, complications and danger and all of it. So stop trying to make my decisions for me and let me be part of your life. The real parts. Not just the sanitized version you think I can handle." Dian stared at her, something fierce and vulnerable warring in his expression. Then he was kissing her, not the careful, controlled kisses they'd shared before, but something desperate and claiming. Zara kissed him back with equal intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "You terrify me," he whispered. "I've faced down armed enemies without fear, but the thought of something happening to you because of me, that terrifies me." "Then we'll be terrified together," Zara said. "But we'll be together." That night, Dian stayed. They didn't make love, not quite. But they fell asleep tangled together on her small couch, Dian's arms wrapped around her like he could protect her from the world through sheer force of will. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Zara felt completely safe. The email came on a Tuesday morning while Zara was helping a student mix the perfect shade of blue for a sky they were painting. "Dear Miss Williams, we are pleased to inform you." She read the first line 3 times before it sank in. She'd gotten the fellowship. Full funding for 2 years, mentorship from industry leaders, access to resources that would let her expand brushstrokes and business from a small community program to something that could reach thousands of kids. Her hands were shaking as she finished reading the email, as she saw the amount of the grant, the scope of the opportunity being offered. "Miss Zara? Are you okay?" 10-year-old Marcus was looking at her with concern. "I'm perfect," Zara said, and she couldn't stop the tears that were suddenly streaming down her face. "I'm absolutely perfect." She wanted to call Dian immediately, but stopped herself. This was her achievement, earned by her work and her vision. She didn't want it tainted by wondering if his influence had played a role, even though he'd sworn it wouldn't. Instead, she called Sienna, who screamed so loudly that Zara had to hold the phone away from her ear. "We're celebrating tonight," Sienna declared. "I'm talking fancy drinks, dancing, the whole 9 yards. You've earned this, see." I know, but I should probably. No buts. You've been either working or with your Mafia boyfriend for 3 weeks straight. Tonight, we celebrate properly. Zara laughed. Fine. But nothing too crazy, okay? I make no promises. They ended up at Luna's, a trendy bar in the Lower East Side that Sienna had been dying to try. The music was loud, the cocktails were strong, and for the first time in weeks, Zara let herself just be young and happy and free. She texted Dian, got some amazing news. Out celebrating with Sienna. Talk tomorrow. His response came quickly. Congratulations on the fellowship. Zara stared at her phone. How did he already know? Did you? No, but I knew you would get it. You were the best candidate by far. Enjoy your celebration. You've earned it. She wanted to push, to ask how he knew, but Sienna was pulling her onto the dance floor and the music was drowning out thought. They danced, laughed, celebrated. Sienna introduced her to some friends, including a guy named Marcus who was funny and charming and clearly interested. Your friend is gorgeous, Marcus said, having to lean close to Zara's ear to be heard over the music. Is she single? You're talking to the wrong friend. Zara laughed. Sienna's the one you want. Actually, Marcus said, his smile turning flirtatious, I was hoping you might be single. Oh, I'm seeing someone. Serious? Zara thought about Dian, about the way he held her like she was precious, about falling asleep in his arms feeling safer than she'd felt in years. Yeah, she said softly. It's serious. Lucky guy, Marcus said good-naturedly. If it doesn't work out, I'll be waiting. It was nearly midnight when things went wrong. Zara had gone to the bar to get water, leaving Sienna on the dance floor. She was waiting for the bartender's attention when she felt someone crowd too close behind her. You're Zara Williams, right? The voice was male, unfamiliar, with an edge that made her instincts flare with warning. She turned to find a man in his 30s, Korean, with expensive clothes and cold eyes. Do I know you? No, but I know you. You're the artist that Kong Dian's been obsessed with. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I have to say, I'm curious what makes you so special. Zara's mouth went dry. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play stupid. It doesn't suit you. He leaned closer, and Zara could smell alcohol on his breath. Tell me, does Dian's little artist know what her boyfriend really does? Or has he been feeding you the sanitized version? I need you to step back, Zara said firmly, though her heart was racing. I'll step back when I'm done delivering a message. His hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to hurt. Tell Dian that the Kwan family isn't backing down. Tell him that everyone he cares about is fair game now, including pretty little distractions like you. Let go of me. Zara tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. What's going on here? Suddenly Sienna was there, along with Marcus and two of his friends. Get your hands off her. Now. The man looked at the four of them, calculated odds, and released Zara's arm with a smile that made her skin crawl. Just delivering a message, he said. I'm sure we'll see each other again, Miss Williams. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd before anyone could react. Z, are you okay? Sienna was examining her arm, where red marks were already blooming. Who the hell was that? I don't know, Zara said, though she was shaking. Someone who knows Dian. Someone dangerous. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and called him. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Dian, call me back. Something happened. I'm okay, but I need to talk to you. She tried again. Voicemail again. A horrible thought occurred to her. What if something had happened to him? What if this situation with the Kwan family had escalated? We're leaving, Sienna announced, already guiding Zara toward the exit. And we're going somewhere safe. But as they stepped outside, Zara found 3 black SUVs parked at the curb, and some striding toward her with an expression of grim determination. Miss Williams, I need you to come with me. Now. What's happening? Where's Dian? He's been trying to reach you. Your phone's been going to voicemail. The signal in that bar is terrible. There's been an incident. Zara's blood turned to ice. What kind of incident? The kind where Mr. Kong needs to know you're safe. Please, Miss Williams. We need to move. Zara looked at Sienna, who nodded. Go. I'll be fine. Text me when you can. In the SUV, surrounded by grim-faced security personnel, Zara tried Dian's number again. This time, he answered on the first ring. Zara. Thank God. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Shaken up, but fine. A man approached me at the bar. He said he was from the Kwan family and gave me a message for you. She heard Dian's sharp intake of breath, heard him say something in rapid Korean to someone else. I'm so sorry, he said, and she heard genuine anguish in his voice. I'm so sorry. I should have seen this coming, should have had people watching you. Dian, breathe. I'm okay. But what's going on? The Kwan family is escalating. They attacked one of our warehouses tonight, real violence this time, not just threats. And apparently they've decided that targeting people I care about is fair game. Where are you? Handling the warehouse situation. Sung is bringing you to a safe house. I'll meet you there as soon as I can. A safe house? Dian, this is insane. Please, Zara. Please just let me know you're protected. I can't think straight knowing you're vulnerable. There was something raw in his voice, almost desperate. Zara closed her eyes. Okay, I'll go to the safe house. But then we're talking. Really talking. No more protecting me from the full truth. I promise. I'll tell you everything. Just please stay safe. The safe house turned out to be a luxury apartment in Midtown, with security cameras, reinforced doors, and guards stationed in the hallway. Zara paced the spacious living room, too wired to sit still. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, leaving her shaky and cold. She kept seeing that man's cold eyes, feeling his grip on her arm. Kept replaying his words, everyone he cares about is fair game. This was real. The danger Dian had warned her about wasn't theoretical anymore. She told him she could handle it, that she was choosing this life. But now, faced with the reality of what that meant, she felt small and scared and completely out of her depth. It was nearly 3 a.m. when she heard the apartment door open. She jumped to her feet as Dian strode in, and her breath caught. He looked like he'd been through a war. His shirt was torn, there was a cut above his eyebrow, and his knuckles were bruised and bloody. Oh my God, Dian. I'm fine, he said tersely, but he crossed the room and pulled her into his arms with enough force to lift her off her feet. I'm fine. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? Just grabbed my arm. It's nothing. Dian set her down and immediately pushed up her sleeve, his jaw tightening when he saw the bruises. Something dark and dangerous flashed across his face. His name is Kwon Jin-young. He's the youngest son of the Kwon family head, and he's reckless and violent, and You're going to clean yourself up and sit down, Zara interrupted, guiding him toward the couch. And then you're going to tell me everything. No more half-truths. For a moment, she thought he might argue. But then he deflated slightly and nodded. While he washed up in the bathroom, Zara found a first aid kit and made tea in the unfamiliar kitchen. When he emerged, cleaned up but still visibly battered, she patted the couch beside her. Talk, she said simply. And finally, Kong Dian told her everything. Dian talked for 2 hours. He told her about his grandfather, who'd started the family business as a protection service for Korean immigrants in the 1960s, how it had gradually evolved into something darker, loan sharking, gambling operations. Eventually territory control. He told her about his father's expansion of the empire, about violence and power plays and a world where respect meant fear and loyalty was enforced through pain. He told her about inheriting it all at 28 when his father died of a heart attack, about being thrown into leadership of an organization he'd been trained for but never truly wanted. I've spent 5 years trying to legitimize us, he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. Investing in legal businesses, phasing out the most harmful operations. But it's complicated. We provide jobs, protection, resources for a community that's often ignored by legitimate systems. If we just walk away, we create a power vacuum that gets filled by people worse than us. The Kwon family, Zara guessed. Among others. They're old school, violent, don't care about collateral damage. They've been pressuring us for months to cede territory in Queens. I've been refusing because I know what they'll do to the businesses and families there. So tonight, they torched one of our warehouses. Hurt 3 of our people, nothing life-threatening, but the message was clear. And Jin-young approaching you is meant to show that they can reach anyone I care about. Zara absorbed this, her mind racing. What happens now? Now I make a choice, Dian said quietly. I can give them what they want, cede the territory, let them win to keep you and others safe. Or I can fight back, which means potential war. What do you want to do? I want to send you somewhere safe, somewhere they can't find you, until this is over. That's not what I asked. What do you want to do about the Kwon family? Dian looked at her, and she saw the weight he carried in his eyes. I want to protect the people who depend on us. I want to not back down to bullies and terrorists. But I also want you safe more than I want to win. Zara set down her tea and took his bruised hands in hers. Dian, I'm not going to pretend I understand your world. I'm an artist from Brooklyn who teaches kids to paint. This is so far outside my experience that I can barely process it. I know. I'm sorry. But, she continued, I know you. I've seen the way you treat people, the way you tip servers and remember security guards' names. I've watched you completely transform when you talk about getting your family's business legitimate. You're not a monster. You're a man trying to do right in an impossible situation. Am I? Dian asked quietly. Because tonight I hurt people, Zara. I went to that warehouse, and I made sure that the men who attacked our people understood the consequences. I wasn't gentle. I wasn't civilized. I was the thing my father trained me to be. To protect people who couldn't protect themselves, Zara pointed out. Context matters. Does it? Does it really? Zara thought about that. About moral absolutes versus gray areas. About the difference between violence for cruelty's sake and violence in protection. I think, she said slowly, that you're asking the question at all means something. Monsters don't agonize over whether they're monsters. Dian pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Zara agreed, wrapping her arms around him. But you're stuck with me anyway. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in the pre-dawn quiet. Finally, Zara pulled back enough to look at him. I'm not leaving. I'm not going into hiding while you deal with this alone. Zara, I'm also not stupid. I understand there are precautions we need to take. Security, maybe staying here instead of my apartment for a while. But I'm not disappearing from your life. It's dangerous. Life is dangerous. I could get hit by a taxi tomorrow. At least this way I get to be with you. Despite everything, Dian smiled. You're impossibly stubborn. You're impossibly protective. I guess we're both impossible. I love you, Dian said suddenly, the words spilling out like he couldn't hold them back any longer. I know it's too soon and the timing is terrible and you probably think I'm insane, but I love you. I've loved you since you burst into that bathroom giving yourself affirmations, and every moment since has just made it more true. Zara's heart felt like it might burst. I love you too. Which is why I'm staying. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they finally made it to the bedroom, their lovemaking was tender and desperate by turns, two people clinging to each other in the darkness and finding light. The next few weeks established a new normal that was surreal and strangely domestic. Zara moved into the safe house temporarily, bringing her art supplies and half her closet. She continued teaching her classes remotely via video call, started planning the expansion of brushstrokes and business with the fellowship funds, and somehow adapted to having armed security shadow her whenever she left the apartment. Dian spent his days handling business, both legitimate and otherwise, and his nights with her, often coming home exhausted, but visibly lighter when she was there. They cooked together in the apartment's gourmet kitchen, Zara teaching him her mother's mac and cheese recipe while he attempted to teach her to make proper Korean fried chicken. They watched terrible reality TV curled up on the couch. They made love and talked for hours and built a life in the spaces between the chaos. But the Kwan situation simmered in the background, an ever-present threat. We're in a stalemate, Dian explained one evening over dinner. They're not backing down, but they also haven't made another direct move. They're waiting to see if I'll cave. What are you going to do? I'm working on a solution that doesn't involve violence. There's a business deal that might satisfy them while protecting our people. But it requires delicate negotiation. The negotiation was set for a Friday evening at a neutral location, a restaurant in neutral territory, with representatives from several other families acting as mediators. I want you to stay here, Dian said that morning, already dressed in one of his perfect suits. Extra security, no leaving for any reason. I wasn't planning on going anywhere, Zara assured him. I have a video meeting with the fellowship advisors and about 1 million grant applications to fill out. But she couldn't shake a feeling of unease as he left. She texted Sienna, sending good vibes my way today. Sienna, always. Everything okay? Zara, just anxious. Dian has an important meeting. Sienna, he's got this. And you've got this. Love you, sis. Zara threw herself into work, trying to ignore the ticking clock. The fellowship meeting went well, Her advisors were enthusiastic about her expansion plans. She approved sketches from her students, responded to emails, and tried not to count the minutes until Dean's meeting would be over. It was nearly 7 when her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Sarah Williams?" The voice was female, professional. "Yes, this is Dr. Chen from Mount Sinai Hospital. I'm calling about Kang Dian. You're listed as his emergency contact." Zara's world tilted. "What happened?" "Mr. Kang was brought in about 20 minutes ago with a gunshot wound. He's stable, but—" Zara didn't hear the rest. She was already grabbing her jacket, already running for the door. Sung materialized in the hallway. "Miss Williams, you can't leave. Dian's in the hospital. He was shot. Either you drive me there right now or I'm getting a cab, but I'm going." To his credit, Sung didn't argue. "I'll drive. But we're bringing backup." The drive to Mount Sinai was the longest 20 minutes of Zara's life. Sung gave her what details he knew. The negotiation had been going well, but someone from a rival faction had crashed it, armed. Shots were fired. Dian had taken a bullet to the shoulder, protecting one of the mediators. "He's okay?" Zara kept asking. "He's going to be okay?" "Mr. Kang is strong," Sung said. "He'll be okay." The hospital was chaos, security everywhere, several men in expensive suits pacing the waiting room, and tensions so thick Zara could barely breathe. A young Korean man approached her immediately. "You're Zara? I'm Min Jae, Dian's second. He's been asking for you. Can I see him?" "He's in surgery now. Should be out within the hour." The bullet missed anything vital, but they're removing it and repairing some muscle damage. Zara sank into a waiting room chair, her hands shaking. Min Jae sat beside her. "This is my fault," he said quietly. "I was supposed to check the security at the restaurant. Someone paid off the staff, let the shooter in. It should have been me shot, not him." "It's not your fault," Zara said automatically. "It's the fault of whoever pulled the trigger." "Kwon Jin-young," Min Jae said, and there was murder in his voice. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the negotiation. But he showed up with a gun and started shooting. "Is he in custody?" "Real police custody, not ours." There were too many witnesses for this to be swept under the rug. The hour crawled by. Zara texted Sienna brief updates, declined the coffee Min Jae offered, and tried to pray to a god she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Finally, a surgeon emerged. "Family of Kang Dian?" Zara jumped to her feet, along with half the waiting room. "Surgery went well," the doctor said. "We removed the bullet, repaired the damage. He was very lucky, a few inches to the right, and it would have been much more serious. He's in recovery now, still groggy from anesthesia, but asking for." He consulted his chart, Zara. "That's me," Zara said, her voice breaking. "You can see him. 5 minutes, then he needs to rest." They led her to a recovery room where Dian lay connected to monitors and IVs, his left shoulder heavily bandaged. His eyes were half closed, but they opened when she entered. "Hey," he said, his voice slurred from medication. "You're here." "Of course I'm here, you idiot," Zara said, tears streaming down her face as she took his good hand. "You got shot." "Just a little shot," Dian said, attempting a smile. "I've had worse." "That's not funny." "Made you smile, though." Despite everything, Zara laughed through her tears. "I was so scared." "I'm sorry." "I'm okay. I promise." His hand tightened on hers. "Love you." "Did I mention that?" "You might have mentioned it once or twice." "Good. Important information. Should be repeated frequently." His eyes were drifting closed. "Stay." "I'm not going anywhere," Zara promised. She stayed as he fell asleep, holding his hand and thanking whoever was listening that he was alive. Family, I need you to drop a heart emoji if you're emotionally invested in Zara and Dian right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button because this story is about to get even more intense. Let's continue. Dian was a terrible patient. "I need to get back to work," he insisted for the 100th time, trying to sit up in his hospital bed and wincing. "The Kwon situation isn't resolved." "The Kwon situation is absolutely resolved," Zara said firmly, gently pushing him back down. Jin-young is in jail on attempted murder charges. The Kwon family has publicly apologized and agreed to the original negotiation terms, and Min Jae has everything else under control. You need to rest. I don't like being useless. You're not useless. You're healing. There's a difference. They'd kept him in the hospital for 3 days before allowing him to return to the safe house, where Zara had transformed the space into a recovery ward. She'd moved a comfortable chair beside the bed, stocked the kitchen with healing foods she'd researched, and generally appointed herself his personal nurse. Dean complained about being coddled, but secretly loved every moment of it. "Tell me about the fellowship," he said one afternoon while Zara was helping him change the bandage on his shoulder. "You had your first official meeting yesterday, right?" "I did." Zara's whole face lit up. "Dean, it's incredible. They've already connected me with 3 community centers that want to pilot the program. And there's a possibility of getting additional funding from." She stopped mid-sentence as Dean's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Then buzzed again. And again. His expression darkened as he reached for it with his good hand, scrolling through what appeared to be a series of urgent messages. "What's wrong?" Zara asked, watching the color drain from his face. "Min Jae needs me to call him. Now." He was already dialing, switching to speaker when Min Jae answered. "Hyung, we have a situation." Min Jae's voice was tight with tension. "Jin Young made bail an hour ago." "What? How?" "The charges were. His family paid off someone. I don't know who yet, but he's out." "And Dean." Min Jae paused. "He's not making threats. He's gone silent. Completely off-grid. None of our contacts know where he is." Zara felt ice slide down her spine. Dean's hand had tightened on the phone, his jaw clenched. "Pull everyone in," Dean ordered. "Double security on all our people and properties. I want eyes everywhere. If he's so much as—" "There's more," Min Jae interrupted. 10 minutes ago, someone delivered a package to the safe house. The guard scanned it. It's not a bomb or anything dangerous. But Dean, it's addressed to Zara. Zara's breath caught. "What?" "Don't open it," Dean said immediately. "We're not touching anything until—" "I already had it x-rayed," Min Jae said. "It's just papers. Documents of some kind. And a note." "What does the note say?" Dean demanded. There was a heavy pause before Min Jae read, "Ms. Williams, there are things about the man you love that you don't know. Things he's hidden from you. Check the Apex Innovation Fellowship donor list carefully. Ask him about March 15th, 2 years ago. Ask him about the real reason your parents died. You deserve the truth before you give your heart to a monster. A friend." The room seemed to tilt. Zara stared at Dean, whose face had gone completely white. "Dean?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "What is he talking about? What happened on March 15th 2 years ago?" He opened his mouth, closed it, and she saw something she'd never seen before in his eyes. Guilt. Pure, absolute guilt. "Zara, I can explain." "What happened?" She stood up, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "And what does this have to do with my parents?" "Your parents' accident." Dean's voice was raw. "It wasn't an accident." The world stopped. "What did you just say?" "I didn't know." Dean tried to stand, forgetting his injury, and gasped in pain. "Zara, please, I didn't know until after we met, I swear to God." "What did you do?" Zara was shouting now, backing away from him. "I didn't do anything." "But my father," Dean's face was anguished. 12 years ago, your father witnessed something. A deal going bad between my father's organization and another family. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, but he saw too much." Zara's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the chair, her mind refusing to process what she was hearing. "My father gave orders to ensure there were no witnesses," Dean continued, his voice breaking. "I didn't know. I was in college, I wasn't involved in the business yet. But 2 years ago, I found the files while going through old records. I saw the names. Williams. I saw that he couldn't finish the sentence. My parents were murdered." Zara's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "And your family did it. I've spent 2 years trying to find proof, trying to get justice for them, but the men who carried it out are dead and my father's dead and—" "Did you know who I was?" Zara cut him off. "That day in the bathroom. Did you already know?" "No. I swear I had no idea. But after we met, I had you researched, basic background check for security reasons, and when I saw your parents' names, He looked physically ill. I knew what my father had done to you. And you didn't tell me." Tears were streaming down Zara's face now. "You looked me in the eye, told me you loved me, made love to me, and you knew the entire time that your family destroyed my life. I was going to tell you. I was trying to find the right time. There is no right time for, hey, by the way, my dead father had your parents killed. Zara was standing again, grabbing her phone, her purse. I can't, I need to. Zara, please don't leave. Not like this. It's not safe with Jin Young out there. I'm not safe here. She was sobbing now. With you. The son of the man who murdered my parents. How could you, how could I? She couldn't finish. Couldn't breathe. Miss Williams. Sung was suddenly in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. I'll drive you wherever you want to go. Sung, no, Dian started. With respect, sir, the lady wants to leave. Sung's tone was gentle but firm. I'll keep her safe. But she has the right to go. Zara took one last look at Dian, at the man she'd fallen in love with, who was now a stranger wearing a familiar face. Don't contact me, she said, her voice hollow. Don't call, don't text, don't send your people to check on me. We're done. Zara. But she was already walking out, Sung close behind her. She didn't look back. In the safe house, Kang Dian sat alone in the silence, his shoulder screaming with pain that was nothing compared to the agony in his chest. His phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. He opened it to find a photo of Zara getting into the SUV with Sung, with a caption. The truth hurts, doesn't it? But don't worry, Kang. This is just the beginning. You took everything from me once. Now I'm going to take everything from you. Starting with her. Jay. Dian stared at the message, ice flooding his veins. Jin Young didn't just want revenge. He wanted to destroy everything Dian loved. And he just succeeded in driving away the only thing Dian couldn't bear to lose. But as Dian looked at that message, at the implied threat, something hardened in him. He reached for his phone and made a call. Min Jae, mobilize everyone. I don't care what it takes or what we have to burn down. Find Jin Young. And prepare a team. Sir, you're injured. I'm going after her, Dian said, his voice cold and absolute. Jin Young thinks he can use Zara against me. He's about to learn exactly why people fear the Kang family. What are your orders? Dian looked at the photo of Zara one more time. The woman he loved. The woman he'd lied to. The woman who now hated him. The woman he would protect with his last breath, whether she wanted him to or not. Whatever it takes, he said quietly. We end this. Tonight. Family. I need you to comment right now, is Zara right to leave? Can Dian be forgiven? And who is really behind all of this? Because something tells me Jin Young isn't working alone. Part 2 is going to be explosive, so make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Hit that like button if your heart is racing right now, and tell me in the comments, hashtag Team Zara or hashtag Team Dian. This is Afro Soul Diaries, and this story is just getting started.